Ryzen 9800X3D is the best gaming CPU in 2025 for upper mid-range and high-end gaming PC builds. But getting the right graphics card, motherboard, and RAM, it can be confusing. Welcome back to PC Builder, I'm Jason. This 2025 Ryzen 9800X3D PC build guide will cover everything you need for the best Ryzen 9800X3D build, including the best graphics card for Ryzen 9800X3D, the best RAM for Ryzen 9800X3D, best motherboard for Ryzen 9800X3D, and more. And we'll give you specific build templates for both a maximum value Ryzen 9800X3D build and a premium Ryzen 9800X3D gaming PC build. If you get value out of this video, please give it a like because it really helps out the channel, and of course subscribe for more cool PC content. Let's jump into it. So what's the best graphics card for the Ryzen 9800X3D in 2025? Well, typically we get the most FPS in a gaming PC build by buying the fastest graphics card that we can afford than just getting a CPU that's not going to bottleneck it. But as we get to the high end of GPU performance, the CPU, it really does start to matter, especially in CPU-intensive titles or competitive titles like Marvel Rivals, where lowered settings are used to maximize frame rate. Currently, the Ryzen 9800X3D is selling for $479. I'll leave retail links down in the video description so you can check out current pricing. Meanwhile, CPUs like the Ryzen 9700X are $280, the Ryzen 9600X, it's about $220, and the Ryzen 7600X, it's about $180. Those are some pretty big price gaps to jump up to the Ryzen 9800X3D. That's why I recommend a minimum GPU of at least a Radeon RX 9070 or RTX 5070, both selling at over $500 at the time of filming. Otherwise, I would drop my CPU down and use that extra money on my GPU. From there, as we go up in GPU power, the Ryzen 9800X3D, it just makes even more sense, especially when paired with a GPU like an RX 9070 XT, RTX 5070 Ti, or RTX 5080. And if you have an RTX 5090, then hands down, I would reach for the Ryzen 9800X3D. In our build, we went with the Power Color Hellhound RX 9070 XT. What's the best RAM for the Ryzen 9800X3D? If you need a refresher on RAM speed, check out our Best RAM for Gaming 2025 video. We want a 2-stick kit, as single sticks, they lose performance, and current DDR5 memory controllers, they struggle to run 4 sticks at the speeds that we want. For RAM speed, Ryzen X3D V-Cache CPUs, like the Ryzen 9800X3D, they're not very sensitive to memory speed, but we would like to get the best performance we can. Like the other Ryzen 7000 and 9000 series CPUs, we 100% want 6000 speed memory for the Ryzen 9800X3D. Any other speed faster or slower and we lose performance. For cache latency, we want as low as possible, and previously DDR5 6000 CL30 had been the standard for Ryzen 7000 and 9000 series CPUs. Those kits run about $90 US for a 2x16GB kit, so 32 gigabytes total. But there are now lower cache latency kits like DDR5 6000 CL28 kits, starting at $120 US, including the Trident Z Neo kit in white RGB that we used in our build, sent over by G.Skill, so big thank you to G.Skill. And we now have DDR5 6000 CL26 kits starting around $180 for 32 gigabytes. In our testing last year, we found no performance increase between CL28 and CL30 kits using an RTX 4090. But if you want to spend the extra $30 for the tighter timings, then go for it. I would not recommend spending double on the DDR5 6000 CL26 kits unless you have an RTX 5090 and you just can't find anywhere else to spend money to increase performance. Great 32GB DDR5 6000 CL30 kits start for as little as $80 without RGB, like the Patriot Viper Venom kits with a metal finish, or kits by Silicon Power and Team Group in white or black. RGB kits start around $90 with kits like my favorite Team Group T-Force Delta or Silicon Power Zenith kits in black or white. G.Skill has several different kits from low-profile Flare and Ripjaws to their new RGB Ripjaws M5 and their Trident Neo kits. And there are tons of other kits from Corsair, from Kingston Furies, and others, and I'll leave them listed down in the video description for you to check out. I'll also leave DDR5 6000 CL28 kits, like the G.Skill one here, and DDR5 6000 CL26 kits as well. So how much RAM for gaming do you need in 2025? I'm recommending 32 gigabytes total for gaming, which is good because most TDR5 kits, they come in 32 gigabyte minimum capacities. 32 gigs, it's plenty for most consumers, and that includes for video editing, for streaming, even a lot of professional workloads. In fact, unless you have a very specific application that requires more than 32 gigabytes of RAM, spending more to get 64 gigabytes or more, it's just a big waste of money, and that could be spent on your GPU, your motherboard, more storage, a better cooler, literally anything else. Finally, we have both XMP and AMD EXPO RAM kits. Every AM5 motherboard that I've seen can use either EXPO or XMP auto overclocking profiles, and there is no performance difference between them. Just remember to go into the BIOS, turn on that XMP or EXPO profile to make sure that your RAM is running at the full rated speed. And this is something that we go over in our How to Set Up a PC guide if you need more help with RAM. Also check out our best RAM for gaming video for a deeper dive. So what's the best motherboard for the Ryzen 9800X3D in 2025? The great news is the Ryzen 9800X3D, it's going to work with any AMD AM5 motherboard with a BIOS update that includes AGESA 1.2.0.2a or later. Because the 9800X3D came out after the 600 series and the X870 motherboards, you may need to update the BIOS to get the CPU to post for the first time. The good news is virtually every AM5 motherboard has BIOS flashback, so you can do this without a compatible CPU. We show you how to do this in a step-by-step guide in our How to Build a PC video, which is linked in the How to Build a PC playlist down in the video description. But what motherboard chipset is best for the Ryzen 9800X3D? From B650, B650E, B850, X670E, A620, B840, it just keeps going. First, eliminate the garbage tier A620 and B840 motherboards that do not allow any overclocking, including the use of AMD's one-click auto overclocking Precision Boost Overdrive, which we want to enable in the BIOS for the best performance. For most gamers, a B650, a B650E, or a B850 motherboard, it's going to be more than enough. X870 and X670E motherboards typically only offer more professional features, like more than 3 M.2 SSDs and increased USB rear panel ports, but if you can find one on sale, you can certainly grab one. The one possible future-proofing consideration for ultra-high-end gaming PCs is getting a motherboard with a PCIe Gen 5 GPU slot. Currently, an RTX 5090 runs just fine on a B650 motherboard with PCIe Gen 4. This will likely also be the case for future RTX 6090 in 2 years' time, and the RTX 7090 in 4 years' time. But it is possible that these future flagship GPUs might run slightly better on a PCIe Gen 5 GPU slot motherboard. The cost of PCIe Gen 5 GPU slot equipped motherboards, it's crashed this year. So it might also make sense to spend a little bit extra if you do see yourself buying a future flagship GPU for this build. Most B650 motherboards have a PCIe Gen 4 GPU slot. Some, but not all, of the X670 motherboards have a PCIe Gen 5 GPU slot. Almost all of the B850 motherboards have a PCIe Gen 5 GPU slot, and all of the B650E, X670E, X870, and X870E motherboards have a PCIe Gen 5 GPU slot. If this feature is important to you, just double check the motherboard specs before you buy it. You can check out our Best Ryzen Motherboard 2025 video for our full recommendations. So I'm just going to give you my top picks for the best motherboard for the Ryzen 9800X3D at every budget level. Starting with the more value-focused motherboards around $140 to $150, these motherboards are all going to have a PCIe Gen 4 GPU slot, 2 to 3 M.2 slots, and basic audio. I like both the ASRock B650M ProRS Wi-Fi and the Asus TUF B650M-E, both at $140 right now. These are very similar boards with great VRMs, 2 full bandwidth M.2 drives. The ASRock has a third half bandwidth M.2 slot. Both have good rear panel USB connectivity, including 4 high-speed USB ports, including a Type-C, and 4 USB 2.0 ports, 2.5 gigabit LAN with Wi-Fi 6E on the ProRS and Wi-Fi 6 on the TUF-E. I also like the MSI Pro B650M-A, which sells for $150 and upgrades 4 of the USB ports to higher speeds with nice black styling, though no built-in rear I/O shield. For budget ATX motherboards, I like the $150 MSI B650 Gaming Plus Wi-Fi. It's basically an ATX version of the previous motherboard and has great styling. For more premium motherboards, we're looking for upgraded audio, built-in rear I/O shields, 3 full bandwidth M.2 drives with at least 2 having heat sinks, and rock-solid VRMs along with great styling. My top value pick for premium motherboards is the Asus TUF B650-Plus for $169 with 4 high-speed USB ports, including 2 Type-C and 4 USB 2.0 ports, 3 M.2 SSD slots along with heatsinks, along with ALC 1220 upgraded audio, and a PCIe Gen 4 GPU slot. You can also consider the MSI B650 Tomahawk for about $10 more with its matte black styling, 8 high-speed USB ports, including a Type-C, along with 2 USB 2.0 ports, and ALC 4080 audio, and a PCIe Gen 4 GPU slot. If you want a premium motherboard that also has a PCIe Gen 5 GPU slot, check out the ASRock B850 Live Mixer with its insane 6 high-speed USB ports and 8 additional USB 2.0 ports. That's just tons of USB ports. It also has ALC 1220 upgraded audio, 3 full bandwidth M.2 SSD slots with heat spreaders, very sharp styling, and like most of the premium 800 series motherboards, rocks Wi-Fi 7 for $185. We went with the currently $199 Asus TUF B850 Plus, and I'm not gonna lie, I think Asus absolutely nailed the styling on this motherboard. It has 3 full bandwidth M.2 SSD slots with heatsinks, 8 high-speed USB ports, including a Type-C, along with 2 USB 2.0 ports and Wi-Fi 7. For those of you looking for ultra premium X870E motherboards, they start around $300 to $350 US and typically add a 4th M.2 NVMe drive and at least one USB 4 rear I/O port, along with standard Wi-Fi 7, premium audio, and insane VRMs. They also all add a postcode readout for easy troubleshooting, something that honestly, I think every mid-range motherboard and above should have. The MSI X870E Tomahawk is the cheapest at $299 with tons of rear I/O. Gigabyte's X870E Aorus Pro has great styling and high-end features for just a little bit more and has an ICE all-white version which includes white connectors. ASRock's X870E Nova has been a really popular motherboard with 5 total M.2 NVMe SSDs, while Asus's offerings start closer to $500 with the ROG Strix X870E-E. There are tons of other motherboard options, including all-white and mini ITX motherboards, so check out the links in the video description and our Best Ryzen Motherboard 2025 video for more alternatives as well. So what's the best CPU cooler for the Ryzen 9800X3D? With its additional thermal headroom, which can help push higher CPU clock speeds, even if we just turn on Precision Boost Overdrive in the BIOS, I think investing a little bit more in our cooler, it makes sense. Both to slightly improve performance, but also just reduce overall system noise. Now for value-focused builds, I recommend any mid-range air cooler, like the id Cooling A620, the Thermalright Phantom Spirit, the Cooler Master 622 Halo, or similar style dual tower cooler. Now if you want to take the build aesthetics to the next level, just about any 240mm all-in-one liquid cooler is sufficient. 360mm coolers, pretty much massive overkill, but since we're talking about super high-end builds here, feel free to go 360 if that gives you a better aesthetic in your PC build. In particular, I like the Thermalright Aqua Elite V3 Liquid AIO cooler. In our build, we went with the maximum performance with the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 RGB 360mm AIO. Of course, this is total overkill, but it's only $110. You can, of course, get this cooler in black as well as non-RGB versions. Last year, Arctic reached out to me after I mentioned in a video that this cooler, it was a pain to mount the pump head to the motherboard. They promised to see if they could fix it. I'm not sure if they did anything, but I purchased this one a week ago, and it was incredibly easy to mount the pump head. In fact, this was the easiest AIO install I've ever done, as the fans come pre-assembled on the radiator. So good job, Arctic. So what's the best SSD for the Ryzen 9800X3D? If you haven't had a chance to check out our best SSD for gaming 2025 video, I'll link it down in the video description. There is no gaming benefit from using anything faster than even a SATA SSD. Although PCIe Gen 3 and Gen 4 NVMe SSDs, those are the best price to performance options. I don't recommend Gen 5 M.2 SSDs. They're just twice as expensive as Gen 4 drives with no consumer benefit, and they also run quite hot. Sometimes motherboards even end up sharing lanes with the GPU or other PCIe slots when you socket a Gen 5 M.2 NVMe. Check your motherboard specs if you do plan to get a Gen 5 M.2 SSD. For this build, we used one of my top M.2 NVMe picks with DRAM in the Acer Predator GM7000 2TB drive, which is PCIe Gen 4. It comes with a thermal pad and a heat spreader, but we used a heatsink on the motherboard instead. For more budget 9800X3D builds, I'd recommend just grabbing a cheaper Gen 3 or Gen 4 NVMe with a good SLC or host memory buffer process, like the Western Digital SN580, Silicon Power UD90, or the Team Group G50. For more mid-range to premium builds looking to add a DRAM cache to make their SSD just a little snappier when doing things like file copies and game installs, consider grabbing a drive like the Clev Crash C930 for $75, the Cardea A440 for about $80, Team Group G70 Pro for $75, or SK Hynix P41 for $80. In 2025, 2TB drives, they tend to be the best price per terabyte, with 4TB drives very close in value. And this isn't 2015 anymore. You do not need a separate drive for your operating system, so it's fine to have a single large capacity drive, especially if that saves you money. I'll leave several SSDs linked down in the video description. So what's the best PC case for the Ryzen 9800X3D? Now this is a high-end gaming PC. We want it to look amazing and have great airflow. For micro ATX options, there's some great values out there starting around $60, like the classically styled BitPhoenix Nova Mesh, and the sometimes out-of-stock Thermaltake View 170TG Atrium style case in white or black with 3 included ARGB fans and up to 280mm radiator support. For full-size ATX cases, I also like the larger View 270 Plus TG. It's just an ATX size version in white or black, around $70 to $80. Now, if the Montek XR ever comes back into stock, that is a banger case for around $70, and we use that in our Ryzen 9600X build guide video. If you want a more traditional front intake ATX case, the Fantex XT Ultra for $79, very solid, and supports rear connector motherboards like MSI's Project Zero. Or you could consider the Corsair 3000D for about $99, very popular. Now, we went with a very premium case in the Antex C5, which comes with 7 included ARGB fans and an ARGB and fan controller. It supports up to 360mm AIO coolers, either side or top mounted. It looks amazing with its dual chamber design for $120. Now there are tons of great alternatives out there, including things like the Montek King 95, so I'll leave additional options in the video description and check out our best PC case video. Finally, let's talk about the power supply. I always recommend you check out our best PSU buying guide. Right now it's the 2024 version, but we will have the 2025 version released shortly. So check out the How to Build a PC playlist linked down in the video description. Now for a build like this, given the high-end GPUs we're considering for it, I'd recommend getting at least a B tier or better PSU as rated on the new SPL PSU list and sizing it at 1.5 times the max rated draw in PC part picker. If you're going to drop in an RX 9070 XT, RTX 5070 Ti, or higher end GPU, definitely grab an A tier rated PSU. We ended up using the Be Quiet 12M 850 watt PSU. Great unit with sleeved cables, PCIe 5.0, ATX 3.1, so it's got the updated 12 volt high power 2x6 cable connection for NVIDIA GPUs. And at $120, it's competitively priced for 850 watt A tier rated units. Now I've put together 2 build templates to get you started. The first is a mid-range, value-focused build that uses the Ryzen 9800X3D at its $479 MSRP, uses a mid-range air cooler, a value ATX size motherboard, DDR5 6000CL30 non-RGB RAM, a 2TB budget NVMe SSD, a Thermaltake View 270 Atrium style PC case, and an A tier rated 850 watt PSU. Without the GPU included, the build costs just about $1,000. For a more premium build, like this one here, we went with the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 ARGB 360mm AIO, upgraded the motherboard to a more premium B850 model for $200, gone with RGB on the RAM at DDR5 6000CL28, upgraded the NVMe SSD to one with DRAM at Gen 4 speed, gone with the Antex C5 premium PC case, and the same 850 watt A tier rated PSU, all for just over $1,200 before the cost of the GPU. Of course, you can spend more with additional M.2 storage, even more on premium motherboards and PC cases, higher wattage PSU, but those templates, they should get you started, and I will leave both of them linked down in the video description for you to check out, along with alternative parts. So what is your Ryzen 9800X3D PC build going to be? Let me know down in the comments. Remember, check out everything linked down in the video description for current pricing and availability in your region and our How to Build a PC playlist, including our guide on how to actually build a gaming PC and how to set up your PC after you build. If you got value out of this video, please give it a like so it really helps out the channel, and of course subscribe for more cool PC content. And we'll catch you on the next one.